Hello, everybody, and welcome to the second relaunch episode of Picture Perfect. I am your host, Bobby Gross, and I just want to take the time right now to thank everybody for watching or listening to last week's episode. I was super pleased with how it came out. I've gotten some great responses from everybody saying that they enjoyed the show, so I really appreciate it, guys. And if this is your first episode, welcome. You can find us on Twitter at PickPerfectCast. We're on all pretty much major streaming podcast platforms. I got some fancy graphics if you're watching on YouTube. So we're upgrading everything. We're trying to look as professional as possible, even though this is far from it. From a show perspective, this is not a professional show. I'm here just hanging out with some people that I like, and we're just talking movies. And for this week, I got my buddy Mike Deacon from What the Show. Mike, how you doing, man?
Doing well. You're talking about professionalism. You're talking to the guy with like the least professional show on YouTube. So I'm not hearing the right person to have that conversation with.
And if you're watching on YouTube, I think Mike likes porgs because
that would be my wife.
The wall of porgs.
Yeah,
Bethany, lovely gal. She's a part of What the Show too. So guys, please check out What the Show on YouTube. It's a great show. Mostly, movie stuff, but they also got some movie trivia schmodown stuff in there.
Lots of ridiculous stuff in there, and it changes every week. So
live streams every week, right? So, I mean, you guys are pumping out everything, and I'm loving what you guys are doing over there. You just crushing it.
We're gonna actually be doing a little bit of schedule changing soon. I because of me, I just changed jobs, and unfortunately the late start times is not going to be very conducive to me anymore. But we typically are on Tuesday nights at 11. That's for now. We will probably be announcing a new time slot in the week or two. We also, I can give you an exclusive. We haven't announced it. One of our favorite of our channel is Drunk Review. We haven't done one in a while. Those of you who saw Jesse Swift's Shark Jumper show know that I wound up having to watch Drive Angry and had an absolute field day with it.
Oh, God.
Bethany has never seen it, so we are going to be doing that. I believe it's going to be on the 18th, which is a Friday.
Awesome.
So we will have Bethany will be returning for the drunk review of Drive Angry.
That sounds like so much fun. Sounds like so much fun. I've actually never seen that movie. I've seen the trailer for whatever reason. I saw the trailer, and it looks just as ridiculous. I'm sure
is the most ridiculous movie I have watched in a very long time.
Well, speaking of watching, Mike, this is a weekly segment we have. Anything that you want to bring up that you've been watching? So, Mike, what you been watching?
Yeah, probably the same answer as a lot of other people. We Bad Batch is probably of the current things that are still going. We finished Mighty Ducks Game Changers. Absolutely love Mighty Ducks Game Changers.
Yeah, we raved about that on last week's show. Love that show. Amazing stuff.
What I really loved about it even more is that it hit any generation. You had the original Ducks generation, which is kind of our age group. Parents, it's perfectly fine. And then you're introducing the Ducks to the younger generation as well, who are picking up, and they're it wasn't necessarily just like a complete nostalgia reboot because they made it more modern. But then they also had that one episode where they brought everybody. It was such a wonderful show. It really was.
It seems like we're getting to that age, Mike, where all the stuff that we grew up with is starting to be rebooted for us, but also if we have kids, that's exactly what the Mighty Ducks Game Changers was. But tell me more about Bad Batch. How are you feeling about it? Because I watched the Clone Wars.
Yeah.
Before it was brought back on Disney Plus. I haven't watched the Disney Plus season of that, but then they spun off the Bad Batch.
Yeah.
How is that going for you?
So if you're not familiar, I'll steer away from spoiling anything. The Bad Batch did feature in the first couple of episodes of the revival of Clone Wars. And then basically, this is not a spoiler, obviously, unless you haven't seen Revenge of the Sith, you know what Order 66 is. This is directly after that. And this is what the Bad Batch, their adventures, it's very episodic. So this one, while there is an overlying thread, it is very, going piece to piece to piece. It's not necessarily, one linear story. First episode is phenomenal. It's over now. It's feature length. It's over an hour long. It's really good.
Oh, wow.
Since that point, they've been up and down. It's fun. Don't get me wrong. They are a lot of fun, but it's not like say Mandalorian, which is the easiest one or Clone Wars even, where, there's Mandalorian had its episodic moments as well.
But it tied into everything.
It all tied into it. And, maybe it will. Bethany looked it up. Like Bad Batch is going for another 2 or 3 months. This is like a whole, it's not just like 8 episodes like most of these series have been. So it has ups and downs, but it is a lot of fun. And there's a lot of Easter eggs in there for people who, or not necessarily Easter eggs, like a lot of nods to diehard Star Wars fans. You're seeing characters who never really got their due in other properties, things like that. And it's very, very reminiscent to the Clone Wars TV show in terms of especially the middle seasons.
Yeah.
Where some episodes are good, some episodes are not. That's not the right way to say it. Because like I said, I've enjoyed them all. But some are better than others.
Some aren't necessary to what the story, the overall story, because that's kind of what I felt for most of Clone Wars, right? Like you have some arcs in Clone Wars that is some of the best Star Wars I've ever seen, but then you'll get a string of 4 episodes that just have nothing to do with anything, and it just goes nowhere. That's why I kind of like, okay, I got what I needed from the original run of Clone Wars. I don't really need to watch the new Clone Wars. And then also I kind of figured that the Bad Batch would go that way. But that's kind of, it seems like that's just a Star Wars animated thing where, it's episodic. It's not like your 1 hour drama that is one storyline for a whole season.
The last 4 episodes of Clone Wars, even if you skip the rest of the season, just the last 4 you need to watch.
All right. I'm in, Mike.
That I will say that with the highest. If you look on IMDb, if I'm not mistaken, the lowest score on those 4 episodes is 9.7.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll
have to get on that, Mike. I appreciate the recommendation.
If you watch those 4 like as if in one sitting, as if it's a movie, I would rank that as top 5 Star Wars.
Oh, see, I think, you know what? Now that you bring that up, I think I had heard something like that where, the season itself was okay until it finally got to that arc of the 4 episodes.
Oh, yeah.
So this is where I struggle though, because I hear that, right? But I'm a completionist at heart. Right. So if I feel like I have to watch the last 4, I have to watch the whole season. But I feel like I might make an exception for this because I have heard this from a couple different people that last 4 episodes are incredible.
There's a side plot with Ahsoka in the season, and her episodes just the last 4 are just phenomenal. The Ahsoka subplot, which is after the Bad Batch one, it's not that great.
Oh, that's a bummer too, because Ahsoka, she was the big character that came out of the Clone Wars, and then to have her kind of wasted in that season, that's a little disappointing. But then she shows up at live action in Mandalorian, and it's like everybody probably forgot about it, right? So
pretty much.
Anything else you've been watching, Mike? Anything that been catching your eye?
In terms of newer content, not so much. I've been in and out so much that I haven't really latched onto a lot of current stuff. A lot of what I watch is kind of just throw something on to turn my brain off at the end of the night. So
after a long day, that's the best kind of feeling, right? It's just comfort food. Either you have some shows like that or some movies like that. I totally understand.
30 Rock has been my current one, I will say. I mean, I've seen 30 Rock many times, but it's been several years. I'm like, that's a good one. I don't have to pay too much attention to it and can just put it on in the background and, occasionally have the moments that are like, oh, I remember this,
Yeah, I've been watching a couple things this past week. First, for show-wise, the show called Servant. I don't know if you've heard about this one. It's actually in its second season on Apple TV. It's I don't know if it's created by or it's just produced by M. Night Shyamalan. So
I did hear about that.
I'm in for anything M. Night. I'm a big M. Night fan. So I checked it out. I liked the first season. The second season I haven't finished yet. I have a few more episodes left. I think it's good enough. Like, it's creepy. It's mostly in one setting. It takes place mostly in this house. I don't. I think it's best to go into the series blind. That's how I go into most things, honestly. Like, I want to know bare minimum stuff.
Right.
So I'm not, Servant is super creepy. I don't know. There's another Shyamalan involved with this show. I want to say it might be his daughter or something like that. Has
We're at
directed
the point that very well could be, considering how long ago he came onto the scene.
Yeah, I know she directed a few episodes in this season. I think she might have been involved in the writing process. Tony Kebbell is in this show from the Planet of the Apes, the newer series. I'm gonna try to get up this woman's name too. She is phenomenal. Like, she's a perfect like horror damsel in distress. She just plays it super campy, and I love it. Her name is Lauren Ambrose. Kind of under the radar actress. I don't know if you ever heard of her.
Yeah, it sounds vaguely familiar.
She was in 6 Feet Under, if you watch that. She was in a couple of episodes of the new X-Files show when that was brought back.
I do. I recognize the name.
Yeah, a couple episodes of SVU. Nothing major, but she is just so like over the top in this show, and it works so well because it's a dark show, but she also knows like what she's doing. And also Ron Weasley is in the show with an English accent.
I haven't seen him in anything in a long time.
He looks exactly the same, which is just that might be more terrifying than the actual show, is how like crazy similar he looks, like from 10 years ago, 20 years ago as a kid. He's trying to do an American accent. His real accent slips in here and there, but it kind of just adds to the show. But yeah, definitely check it out. It's 2 seasons. The second season wrapped a few months ago. I'm kind of behind on it.
Yeah.
But definitely, like, if this is a horror episode, since we're talking about Conjuring, if you're into horror or suspense stuff, definitely check out Servant on Apple Plus. I know a lot of people don't even have it, but from my experience, like, there's a really good amount of good stuff on Apple Plus.
Well, I know everybody loved Ted Lasso, so that was that's the reason everybody, if anybody has it, that's primarily why.
I also started, not to give too many thoughts about this, but I also started For All Mankind, which is a kind of a revisionist history show about the space race in the 60s. I watched the first episode. It was pretty good. So maybe in a couple more weeks, I'll finish that up and give my overall thoughts on that.
Nice.
And then really the only other major movie that I saw this week was a movie called Spontaneous. This one was a video on demand released from last year, so like super under the radar. It just came on to Amazon and Hulu. I want to say it's actually leaving Amazon in a couple days, but it just got added this past month on Hulu. So this is Charlie Plummer and Catherine Langford from 13 Reasons Why. She was in Infinity War or Endgame as Hawkeye's daughter.
So that would have been Endgame.
Yeah, so she's done some stuff. She also has that big Netflix show that I never checked out, the fantasy show. But this movie is awesome. It's kind of crazy because I think that if this was on Netflix, it would have been a huge hit.
Yeah,
it's one of those movies. It's a coming of age. It's a high school movie with a little bit of a genre twist of these. For whatever reason, it's actually never explained in the movie, which is kind of why I like that a little bit too. Her classmates just start exploding for no reason, spontaneous combustion, and it's gory. It's subversive. I like what this movie did. It's kind of, I can't even compare it to anything. I think you'd have to watch it for yourself. But Catherine Langford is incredible in this movie. I think she has a big future. It kind of sucks that, she's not coming back to the MCU because I think she would just fit in like a glove. She is so good. But it's called Spontaneous. It subverts like all of the high school cliches too. It's really, really good. I think Mike, this is like a perfect date night movie for you and Bethany. Like, this is just one to pop on. It's super, like, super violent. I love it. I love it. It was so good. It's called Spontaneous. It's on Hulu and Amazon right now. So definitely check it out if you can.
That's probably more of a Bethany's not like Bethany actually wouldn't even stay in the same room as me when I watched The Conjuring to do this. So
Really?
She is not a horror person whatsoever.
See, maybe it, but the thing is, like, Spontaneous isn't a horror movie. It's kind of like a comedy. It's definitely got some funny moments. I wouldn't classify it as a horror though. That's the interesting part. Like, I don't know how to classify it. It's just one of those movies that you have to see,
Right.
because it's just a bunch of fun. So yeah, hope you guys check it out and let me know what you think if you watch it.
Cool.
So Mike, this week's episode we are gonna go over The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It. Now, the way that we do it on the show is we'll start with non-spoiler, and we'll go into spoilers later on. I'll put some timestamps in the description like last week. I know a couple of people said that it was super helpful to them because they hadn't watched those movies, but just courtesy-wise, it just makes the most sense.
Yeah.
So we watched this movie, Mike. It's also available on HBO Max. I don't know how you watched it, but
yeah.
Okay, so Mike, what'd you think about The Conjuring? The Devil Made Me Do It, and what's your relationship with The Conjuring?
So I not like the biggest on the whole franchise as a whole. Obviously the original is I would say the best, and it kind of goes like this to me. This is like I didn't love and I didn't hate this movie. I was kind of just like, all right. At the end of it, there were some things they were setting up that I really liked, especially in the beginning of the film. I really, the opening sequences, the first 10, 15 minutes is fantastic. Yeah. But it definitely, the story veers to a different direction and it loses its luster a little bit. It's very well acted. Very, very, the performances are better than the film itself is kind of how I felt on this one.
Yeah, I'll say this. I think you felt for this movie like I felt last week with Cruella. Like it's kind of indifferent to it. It was fine, and that's I feel like that's the worst kind of feeling with movies.
Exactly.
Like, I'd rather hate a movie than just feel like, okay, that was a movie that I watched for 2 hours.
Because you'll never remember this. You want some kind of like real feeling one way or the other, because otherwise it's just going to be something that's like a check mark. I saw it once and that's it.
Yeah, and especially in a franchise like The Conjuring, it seems like there's been a lot of those movies, particularly with the spinoffs, because just to give my history with The Conjuring before I say what I thought about the movie. I had watched the first 2 Conjurings last year for the first time.
Yeah.
And I was blown away by that first one. I think that's probably one of my favorite horror movies I've ever seen.
It's one of the best in the past 10 years for certain.
And I'm not a big horror guy because I've mentioned this before. I don't really get scared by horror movies. So if that's for people that I'm going to assume for people, not me, that feel that way, you have to bring a lot to the story because I feel like with horror fans, one of the main reasons that they enjoy horror movies so much is to get scared.
Right.
So I don't feel that emotion during horror movies. So, but the first one, I wouldn't say I was scared, but I was definitely creeped out by it. And
you're sucked into it. You get sucked into that first one.
And it's like more of a haunted house movie, which I enjoyed. Right. And everybody, like, I feel like for this main 3 movies of The Conjuring, at least, everybody is just so good in it. Like there's never really one performance that is like, oh, okay, well, you're dialing up a little bit too much. So I watched the first 2. And then I recently watched Annabelle because I was like, okay, you know what? Let me watch everything that The Conjuring offers in their universe, right? And I thought it was a steaming pile of crap.
Yep.
That it's like everything that I don't like about horror movies in one. And it's like a creepy doll movie, and I like the Chucky movies, but that's because like they're mostly comedies. They don't take themselves seriously.
They don't take, especially when it comes to any kind of creepy doll movie, you have to have a little bit of a tongue in cheek with it to make it work. Because if you go super, super serious, it's tough to take it. You know, if you made Chucky without the humor, you know, Child's Play would not be a hit.
And I think that and I haven't seen the remake or the reboot of it. I think that's what happened with the reboot. Yeah. Like it just took itself seriously. But like this one, Annabelle, I was like, oh my God, this was so awful. And then I tried to watch Annabelle Creations. Yep. Yeah. And I realized that most people think it's actually much better than the first one, but I kind of tapped out on it. I'm like, you know what? Let me just stick with the Conjuring movies itself. Right. So I never got into the other ones because I also heard like The Nun and Curse of La Llorona. I heard those weren't good at all either.
The Nun had a phenomenal trailer. And then, yeah, the Nun's trailer, like YouTube got complaints on it because it was it was just an ad on there. It was scaring the crap out of people.
Oh, wow. I didn't hear about that.
Yeah, so because there's a jump scare in the trailer itself, and people who weren't expecting that when they put on, just I'm going to watch a movie review of Avengers, and all of a sudden that comes on,
And that makes sense though, because I mean the Conjuring movies are technically New Line, but they're made by Warner Brothers, and Warner Brothers always has like good trailers. Yep. And I feel like with horror movies and comedies especially, it's hard to judge a movie by the trailer because they might just put the best stuff in the trailer.
That's 100% true.
But the thing is, I didn't watch any trailers for this new one. So
yeah, I didn't either. I'll be honest, I didn't either.
I didn't have any preconception going into this. And from what I heard was the trailer might have sold this movie differently than what it actually was. A lot of people thought it was going to be like a courtroom drama because, The Devil Made Me Do It was an actual case in the United States. And we're actually, Mike did some research on this. He's going to go into some good stuff in the spoiler section because we don't want to, even bother leaking a little bit of what might actually be the plot of this movie. So just to be safe, it's going to be in the spoiler section. So if you want to check that out, stay tuned. So I just heard like this movie was going to be different either way from the first two.
Right.
And I think that's why I liked it so much. Like it's not a great movie, right? Like I would say it's on par with the second one because the second one, I enjoyed, but the first one is just, it's a whole nother level.
Right.
So I would say this is on par with the second one. It's good, right? I like that it didn't do the same things. It kind of did that in the beginning of the movie. Which was actually ironically the best part, I would say, of the film. But I did like how it kind of went in a different direction for the rest of it. Performances are all great. And I want to shout out Julian Hilliard, who is the little kid with the glasses in this movie. Yeah. He has two big scenes of like being scared with the waterbed and the shower. And I thought like those were the two scariest scenes 100%. Of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
And he was in WandaVision. I don't know if you knew this. He was one of the kids in WandaVision. I did
not know that.
I was like, why does this kid look so familiar? And he was in WandaVision. So he might be like the next Jacob Tremblay at this point because he's picked some good projects.
He did put, for somebody his age, he made you feel those scenes. He 100% did.
For sure. And it seems like a lot of horror movies do that, like with the kids. Like the kids usually stand out because they're the ones, it's easy to scare a kid. And it's easy for you to be scared because, he's just an innocent little boy. But he was super good in this. My guy, Patrick Wilson, was great. Vera Farmiga is great. Mm-hmm. I think it's all around well acted. The problem that I had with it, and I don't know about how you feel, Mike, was the third act. It just, I was with it. I never was bored by this movie, but it kind of went into a weird, like, I hate saying this because I think saying a twist is a spoiler itself, but it kind of gets a little twisty at the end. I just didn't like that third act.
Well, I think the third act could have been better if they honestly cut a little bit of it out. Like if this was a little bit more tightly edited, the third act might have been better.
Yeah, and just the way it ends too is like, oh god,
it just ends abruptly. And
and it kind of
doesn't pay off the it does go based on everything it says is kind of for the most part what happened in real life. but it takes everything it set up in the first act and just kind of like, okay, oh, by the way, this is what happened.
Yeah, it wasn't a satisfying finale, and I think if you nailed the ending, I probably would have liked this a little bit more because you started out super well. Like we both agree, like it started really, really well. I liked where it was going.
20 minutes are fantastic.
So good.
Yeah.
I liked the middle part. I was with it. I was interested all the way through. And then the third act, I mean, it's not horrible. It's just,
It didn't stick the landing.
It just didn't stick the landing. But I feel like, if you like the Conjuring movies, you're gonna like this movie, right? I mean, it's not. I feel like if it didn't do too much different to where it's just going to turn people off. It does take a little bit of a different direction. So I would say if you do like the movies, don't expect what you've seen in the first two because they changed it up, which I appreciated. Because, when you come to these franchises, they'll just repeat the same formula, and I feel like this one, it changed it up enough to where I appreciated it. I'm glad they didn't do the same things. But how do you feel like this ranks in the franchise? Have you seen all of the Conjuring universe movies, and where would you put it?
I'm just going to say that the original three, and I think they kind of go in order for me. It's boring to say that when it happens, but like that's just how it was. You're never going to get the impact that the original had because nobody expected it. That, and after the first one, there's a lot of excitement. It's just you're not going to get that kind of. I'll be very surprised if they manage to match that first one.
Well, you watched this at home, so do you feel like if you were in a theater, it would have been a different experience for you?
100%. I just feel like the theater experience is a different experience outright. Like in terms of just like being focused in on the movie and things of that nature. I think there are a lot of movies, especially, without going into spoilers, but where it's making you think about things and kind of putting pieces together. I find that a lot easier in a theater than I do at home when you're just so honed in. And also, I will say with the horror movie, sometimes horror movies are a rare thing. Like you almost have to see them twice in normal times in theaters because people are so rowdy if you go to a Friday night show. So you almost have to go again, like to a less crowded one to actually pick up on the details because, hearing things, which for some movies is fun, some movies it's not. I wouldn't say the Conjuring, the Devil Made Me Do It would be one you would get a lot of fun out of people screaming at the screen and stuff like that because this is not a tongue-in-cheek kind of movie where, like you're saying, something like Child's Play, absolutely, bring me the rowdy crowd. But,
Yeah, and that's a great point because, I appreciate what Warner Media has done this year with putting all of their theatrical movies on HBO Max because for me, I mean, I was a little skeptical at the beginning because I was like, you know what, I didn't want to be, over dramatic about it, but I was like, man, is this gonna like really end theaters? If you sign up for a streaming service and then you get all of their movies when they drop. I mean, financially, it doesn't seem that way because Conjuring 3, the estimates are like $25 million this weekend, which is great. It's the number one movie at the box office, which is awesome.
Yep.
So with the option of being home and being able to watch it here instead of at a theater, I was tempted because I know I've been to a couple of horror movies in the theater where people become a little bit too much, like you said, Mike. Like they can go overboard. I saw this on a Saturday afternoon at 1:45.
So yeah, you didn't have the crazy crowd.
Not a crazy crowd. There was a good amount of people, but I also saw it in Dolby, which is phenomenal. Wow. I don't know how you feel, Mike. Are you a Dolby guy or an IMAX guy?
No, we have Dolby at my home theater is the Disney Springs Theater. They have Dolby, so yeah.
So, and I think for this movie, it works really well. I think horror movies in general, because typically the sound. Exactly.
Yeah,
Like
sound.
horror movies, a big part of the horror movies are the sound. So when you have all of the sound going on, and especially like with the colors too in Dolby, when you see some of the scenes where Vera Farmiga is using like a flashlight and it's
Right.
like almost shining in your eyes,
Mhm.
it's definitely a different experience. And I think that's why you might have felt a little bit differently. And you've even
Right.
admitted it yourself, you might have felt a little bit differently in the theater,
Yeah,
because I thought that if I watched this at home, I think I would have felt like you, Mike, honestly,
Mhm.
because the temptation to check my phone because it's not like a super fast moving movie. It's like 2 hours.
It's methodical.
I wouldn't call it slow to where it's boring. Like it just takes its time, I would say.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So those would be the parts that I would probably check my phone if I wasn't in the theater. But because I'm locked in, I'm in a nice comfy recliner, which is nice. I love the Dolby, although the AMC Dolby recliners aren't great, but they're comfy enough. They don't go all the way back.
They don't go all the way back. No.
The footrest doesn't go all the way up. So like, what are we doing here?
It's like a 30-degree angle or something. It's a little weird.
Yeah, it's not the best recliners, but it's something. It's better than the cheap, because some of the AMCs still haven't upgraded their seats, so it's an upgrade. And you got the bigger screen, you got the sound. So I was invested in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like I would suggest seeing this in the theater if you can, because I think what Mike experienced, it's probably what you're going to experience and what I would have if I stayed home. Because I think this is a movie theater movie. Like, I feel like most horror movies are like that, though, when you're super, the room is totally dark. You're with a community of people, which, maybe you like all the interactions with the screen. I mean, I do sometimes, but not necessarily with horror movies. But I think you go out to the theater for this if you're able to.
Right.
And you've been back to the movies, right? You've been there.
I've been once. Well, technically twice. I had a private screening that we set up, but I got into an advanced showing of Mortal Kombat right before that came out.
Big Mortal Kombat guy. I know you're a big Mortal Kombat guy too.
Yeah. Anyone in the show knows Jader Paramo. He hooked me up with that. So I thank you, Jader, for that. That was my first time in theaters. And the previous movie before that I saw was Sonic the Hedgehog. So that's like 14 months ago. Sonic was better than I thought it was going to be.
I'll admit that. It was good. It wasn't great. For a video game movie, it's definitely good.
It fits into this same category. Like, I don't need to go watch Sonic the Hedgehog again, but I enjoyed it.
But you'll watch the sequel coming out next year, right, Mike?
Yeah, I hope fingers crossed it's decent. Kids sequels are tough to follow up. So,
but for The Conjuring, for people that are just gonna not listen to the spoiler section because they don't want to be spoiled, I would recommend it. What about you, Mike?
Yeah, it's again, this is the type of movie for me. Do I regret watching it? Absolutely not. But I would say, obviously I would recommend the first one outright. And then these two are, they're perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with them. You're going to watch it and be like, okay, that was cool. And probably 2 or 3 days later, it'll be like, oh yeah, I watched that.
Yeah. Those are the worst kind of movies. But let's just jump into spoilers now. So this is the timestamps are in the description if you wanted to jump to the end. Totally cool with me. So Mike, you did some research on this case. Now, The Conjuring I don't know about the spinoffs. I highly doubt it. But the Conjuring itself, they usually base it on true events, but they play kind of loose with it. So how about this movie? How about the movie compared to the real case? How did that go down?
It's very similar. So the defense that they used is basically what they used as the basis of the story. So from what I could tell, I read into it, was reading it, and I'm like kind of going back and forth between the movie. A lot of the details are very, very similar. The murder is basically done the same. The method that it happens, and like with the kennel and everything and all of that, it looks, from what I read, that's pretty darn close to what happened. The biggest differences was that they had in the movie is at the end when they it literally just scrolls it on the screen, is the sentencing was portrayed a little bit differently.
Okay.
But for the most part, he did serve 5 years, which is, that is accurate. That's what they said in the movie. He was sentenced for 10 to 20. He was not sentenced to life. It was, such a weird trial because they're literally saying a demonic possession made me do this. And in some ways, I don't think that this would have been a better movie if they focused entirely on the trial. But I feel like just putting at least maybe a cutaway scene or something to the, just listening to, you saw the judge's reaction when they said not guilty for reason of, and you saw the reaction the judge and the bailiff had. And it's maybe they should have put a little bit more of something from the testimony or something like that. And, to spice it up a little bit. I'm not saying it should have been the whole movie. It could have been the whole movie, but how well would a horror courtroom drama work?
I was gonna say, how would you feel about that? Because it feels like watching the movie, it seems like they have an obligation to get into that specific case, but they also bring in those other 2 murders, or the one murder and the one potential one of Ed, that he's I don't know, cursed or whatever. So it feels like it's a little bit conflicted. It's like handcuffed in that sense. Did you feel that at all during the movie?
Yeah, they definitely. I think the story they really wanted to tell was the middle of the movie, but they attached it to make it from the true experiences, because all 3 movies are based on their true experiences, and it did feel a little handcuffed. So in a way, it feels like at times you're watching 2 different movies.
Yeah, I totally understand that, because like you said, do you really want a court case movie for The Conjuring? You have to do something different, but
it's an interesting premise when you think about it, doing a horror movie out of a courtroom. There is a premise there, but I don't know if it's The Conjuring.
And I think that's what was sold in the trailer from what I heard. Like I said, haven't seen the trailer. Yeah. It seemed like they heavily relied on the true crime aspect of the movie. And maybe that's why the people that saw the trailer went into this and came out disappointed. That might have been one of the reasons why they were just sold a different goods than what they got.
Because again, I also did not watch the trailer beforehand. I've actually been actively trying for most properties to avoid, Loki.
Same.
I'm going blind this week.
Yep,
so
me too.
I've been on unless it's something absolutely huge that I really want to see. I've been avoiding them. Based on what you're saying, I think that this trailer basically marketed the first 25 minutes of the movie.
Yeah, I think so, because like you said, it's kind of split personality, because you have the court case, but then you have the mystery aspect of it that the Warrens investigate. And that's where the big chunk of the movie comes from. We leave, the guy who's possessed in the beginning for a while, in
the movie.
Yeah.
Little, connections to him, but
little meetings here and there with his girlfriend and the kid, but nothing major. We don't really get any updates on the case. It's mostly just the Warrens going out, finding this retired priest, asking him the questions, because of course, you have to have that kind of one character in these movies where they lay it all out to explain it to the audience and to the characters. And then, it comes out that his daughter is the one who is doing the cursing.
Right.
And that's the big twist, I guess, at the end. And you kind of knew something was going to go on with that priest, because unless you're just doing an exposition dump in the middle of the movie, why else would you introduce that character?
Why was he there? So, almost more so than the characters that the movie initially introduces.
Yeah, and then because he was involved in a bunch of cult stuff back in the day, so kind of like the Warrens in that sense, and he's also collecting all of the stuff like the Warrens, which is kind of funny. But that kind of leads us to the third act, which we weren't a big fan of, where I don't know, they break a table and love conquers all. It's what kind of message is this? I don't know what's going on here. What did you think about that. I mean, let it all out, like spoilers, whatever. That ending was just weird.
It was bizarre because, again, I don't think like if this was like from the writers, if this was from the direct, like there was no focus like on the end game on this. They were just throwing stuff at the end there, just like, okay, and why does this really tie in?
Yeah, because James Wan, he directed the first two. He didn't direct this one. This was the director of La Llorona, I think.
Yeah, that's correct.
But James Wan was involved in the writing, so he did, and he produced the movie. So he wasn't exactly like, this wasn't his Conjuring per se. Right. So maybe that was one of the reasons why it didn't seem as cohesive. But he also he co-wrote the script, which is a little confusing too. So maybe it would have been a little bit more clear if he understood the pages more that he wrote, and then he put it on screen for everybody. Maybe there was just something lost in translation there. Yeah,
because again, it really was like perfectly fine, and again, there's nothing about this plot. It went along, it was methodical and stuff, and then it just kind of comes to the end. I'm not going to say it unraveled.
No, I wouldn't say that.
It didn't really unravel, but it really just lost its focus.
Yeah, because like I said, I was with it, but I was like, I just had to roll my eyes about, because we get this thing about the Warrens in the middle of the movie, how they met, which I liked. I like that. Give more backstory to the Warrens. I mean, you see the same stuff from them over and over in these movies where they're investigating and they're doing all this paranormal stuff. Let's learn a little bit more about the Warrens, which I liked.
Yeah, they scratched the surface on it, and then they had a nice little nod to it at the end.
Yeah, but then it becomes like overly sentimental at the end, where
the tone just totally shifts at the very last second, and then they go from that, and then they go to the end credits where they're going through the show and like actual footage and stuff. But you're going from like this like sentimental moment, and then all of a sudden you got this brooding music on the end credits.
And I also love at the end of these movies where they usually like show pictures or the audio, and the Warrens look nothing that are actually in the movie. Like they're just they're like older in real life and a little bit heavier, and like they just Hollywoodized the characters.
Vera Farmiga's hair is like the same style, and that's really about it. Everything they don't really
same kind of like dresses and everything like that. Same clothes.
The costuming is pretty spot on, but no, the actual Warrens are not what you consider Hollywood A-list material.
Yeah, it's just I like the movie. Listen, I like the movie. It was just like Ed is possessed at the end, and then like she tries to like remember their love, and that's what like takes away the possession, and then it's like, is this Interstellar? Like what's going on here? Like love conquers all. It didn't fit this movie. I don't get it. Like what is going on here?
Yeah, they should like, because and the whole ending, as they go from that, and then they shift over and they finally go back to the courtroom, but the courtroom gets mentioned for what, maybe 20 seconds. It's nothing. You see them going into the, him being taken into the case, and he sees his girlfriend, and like that moment should have like the way they presented it should have meant more. But when you're watching it, you're just like, meh.
But listen, there's good stuff in here too, right? Like we mentioned the opening, the scares are good.
Like the whole beginning with the exorcism is fantastic. They did that really well.
And I thought the exorcism at the end was pretty good too, right? Yeah. But it's just like contrasted with what's going on with Ed, which I will say, like, it's kind of ridiculous that he was possessed.
Right.
But I liked how they shot it. It was like straight out of The Shining, where they would shoot him from below, and instead of carrying the axe, he's carrying the hammer or whatever it was. So I like that a lot. I think that the movie looks good. It's well acted. I think just people are gonna have problems with the story in the end, right? And I still liked it for what it was. It was an easy watch for me. I know some people got lost in it. They weren't expecting this kind of movie.
Right.
do you expect another one of these movies, or is this the end for them?
Almost certainly. I mean, this franchise is way too valuable to Warner Brothers at this point, and they know right now with the box office receipts for this year are not they're not going to be held to a standard of what they used to be. We don't, they've never fully said what this HBO Max deal actually is contributing for film, but they said Mortal Kombat was a smashing success for them, and by box office numbers, it didn't look phenomenal, but they said with the HBO Max deal, it was wildly successful for them. I have a feeling this is going to be the same way. So as long as they have the content, I have a feeling there's definitely going to be more spinoffs there. I mean, there's almost no doubt.
Yeah, always.
And they're so cheap to make. I'd have to look more into the Warrens themselves to see what other stories they have. If they're going to do it the way that they've been doing it, that's the way it would be, If they have more to say.
I mean, I don't know if this would work, but maybe for the next one, they would do something with serial killers, because we're in the 70s right now.
Yep.
So if you jump ahead maybe 8 or 9 years, that's the rise of the serial killer.
Yeah.
So is there something with that? Although, then you lose the whole paranormal aspect, I guess, or unless you somehow shoehorn it into one of these things where it's a revisionist history thing where, the Night Stalker or somebody like that is possessed or something.
Yeah. And then again, that's is that, I'm assuming you have to go spin off on that, I'm not, because is that the Warrens? That's going to be the real question is, are they going to deviate from the Warrens' lives, or are they going to go? I think that's why they wanted the spinoffs are, and the thing is, the spinoffs, most of them have made huge box office.
Yeah, for sure.
No budget. So, The Nun, if I'm not mistaken, made over 300 million worldwide. What did that movie cost to make? Seriously.
What, like a nickel? What? I think weren't they coming out with the Crooked Man movie? I don't know if that was happening.
There's so many movies right now that I'm was that announced? When is that supposed to my brain is the HBO Max calendar is one of the only things I'm okay, that looks like that's all finite. But
yeah.
Everything else is this got rescheduled 6 times. And
I mean, I guess, out of this movie, what would be the spinoff? Would it be, the daughter's origin, the evil villain of this movie? Would it be, the retired priest's origin, him investigating that cult? What would it be? Probably something like that, right?
Yeah, they could go that way. Or I was about to say, they could go with Daniel, the kid who was originally exorcised at the beginning. Either how he became possessed, you could do kind of a prequel, or you could just have him 10, 15 years down the line. But again, you got to tread carefully with that since they're, this is a true story. So,
yeah,
do you want to deviate from his actual story or not? But it's a very weird circumstance to make these kind of movies.
Yeah.
Based on true stories. So
that's why I think that's why I coming out of this, I didn't know how much was true, which is why I appreciated what you researched, because it seems which is surprising, because a lot of the stuff I'm I can see it, but definitely some stuff I could see them taking liberties with. Right. So it seems like most of this is typically loosely based on true stories and everything like that. But I think they did a good enough job. I'm actually surprised with how much was actually true to life, which is, encouraging.
Yes. Obviously, from what I read, there's a lot of information about the trial, and there's a lot of information about the charges and stuff like that. And it mentions the exorcism of Daniel, the younger boy. So obviously, the opening scene, they can take as much liberty as they want, because how is that? Unless somebody was there videotaping that, who knows what actually happened in that? So. But the stuff that they could make true to the story was pretty darn close.
Yeah. And I think, if you haven't even watched any of these movies, I think you would be fine jumping into this one, right?
It's its own story. Yeah, it really is. Aside from getting the backstory of the Warrens, that's really the only thing you'd be missing out on.
Yeah, the only character, it's really just characters crossing over. Other than that, I mean, there's not really one through line, I would say, besides besides Vera Farmiga's visions, which has been established in, previous movies. I would say there's not much connectivity at all.
Yeah, this is very easy. If you hadn't seen the other ones, you could definitely just jump into this one. That's no questions asked, I think.
Yeah. So I think that's all. Anything else you have to say about Conjuring? I think, I liked it. You were kind of in the middle, but that's is what it is, right?
I'd say like 3 out of 5. If I'm giving it a
Yeah,
star
same.
rating. Fair.
Yeah, I would probably give it around there too. Maybe a little bit higher than that, but I just appreciate, being able to go to the movies. I think that's what
Yes.
it
Oh
is.
my
Like,
God. I cannot wait. I've been an AMC A-list member for a while because it's such a ridiculous deal.
me
Especially
too. Me too. Yeah.
like the Dolby theater. It's insane. You're basically one Dolby movie is the price of your monthly subscription. So I know that they are going to be where everybody's on pause and they're going to unpause it next month. So I'm going to be forced to go back and start going to the theaters more often, which is a good thing. I'm so excited because I used to go to the movies once or twice a week. And, I've missed that for the past 14, 16, 15 months.
Yeah, and the great thing, like I mentioned last week, is there's so much backlog of movies and everything that was originally supposed to come out this year too. It's like this is the perfect time to get one of these subscriptions to an AMC, or I think Regal has their own. I think Cinemark has their own, Alamo, because every week there is a new movie. Which is perfect for this show and your show too, Mike, if you needed to talk about things, because there's just unlimited stuff in theaters plus all the stuff that comes out on streaming.
The thing that's going to be the next year and a half it's going to be really interesting because there's just so much that was filmed, and then a lot of Hollywood productions did towards the end of last year start pumping stuff, filming, and Marvel's already got 3 movies in the can to come out in the next year and a half.
Plus their Disney Plus shows.
Yeah, plus their Disney. So all of these are waiting for it. The only fear I have is that it's going to be too much. That's the only. I'm like, it used to be like, I would take my A-list subscription and I'd go see a movie I would never in my wildest dreams, have gone if I was paying full price for. And sometimes it was great, sometimes it wasn't. But now it's gonna be like, am I going to be able to see everything?
But you know what, Mike? That is a great problem to have.
Yeah.
Especially considering where we were this time last year. I would absolutely welcome that problem into my life if that were the case.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So that's about it, guys. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Mike, thank you for being here.
Absolutely.
Plug away, man. I mean, you already mentioned what the show, but please plug away.
Yeah. So what the show again? We're on YouTube on right now, Tuesday nights. This coming week, I'm actually kind of happy about this one. We don't have a structure. We didn't.
Great.
We decided for 1 week this week. We haven't done a show with just the 4 of us in a while, so it's just gonna be the core 4 of us. But the week after that, we got a fun one coming up. We recently did a show with movies that we thought would be better as musicals.
Ooh, I like that.
That we just had that one aired 2 weeks ago. That was with Jacoby Bancroft and Maxwell Haddad. They were both on it, and we had a bunch of people jump on. Jeff Alterman was on it as well. But next week, we're going to be doing the same idea, but instead of musicals, horror movies. And Adam Collins is jumping on to do that with us.
Oh, man, that sounds like an amazing show. Yeah. And speaking of musicals, next week is a big one on this podcast because In the Heights is releasing. Yep. I am a little bit too excited for this movie. I've heard incredible things about it, so I'm even more excited. This is one of my most anticipated movies of last year, of this year. So I am so excited to talk about that one. I think that one's going to be a really, really special movie. So I'm super pumped about that. And another one that's going to be available on HBO Max. But I mean, listen, for that one, you bet your ass I'm going to the theaters. Hopefully Dolby, I'll take IMAX, whatever, the biggest screen possible and the best sound possible to see In the Heights.
My wife's seeing it on Tuesday. We got advanced screener stuff.
Oh, I'm so jealous. But yeah, guys, you can find the podcast on all major podcast platforms: Apple, Spotify, Google. If you're listening, we're also available on YouTube. We are at Picture Perfect. If you just search that, I'm sure you can find it. At Perfect Cast on Twitter. And yeah, please tweet me, leave a comment, tell me what you thought of this episode. Let us know what you thought of this movie. And stay tuned for next week with In the Heights. Until next time, thank you for listening and watching.